This is a video about how to use tmux, or terminal multiplexor. So if you haven't heard of tmux, it's a fantastic utility that I would recommend using really anytime you're working on Linux, but especially if you're working primarily on some remote server and you'd like to be able to persist your bash history and your sort of working windows on the remote server. So it's really, really useful if you'd like to have some nice working environment where you have a whole bunch of different bash windows all configured the way you like, all with kind of separate command histories, and you'd like to be able to see all of those windows, you know, maybe on the screen at once, and have different tasks that you context switch between, like different sets of windows that you context switch between, and you don't want those windows to all disappear every time you shut down your computer or your laptop or reboot or something like that. So sort of the life cycle of your workspace is tied to the uptime of the server rather than the uptime of your local computer. So how do you use tmux? So the first thing you do is you create a new tmux session by just typing tmux and pressing enter. Let me just check here if I have any tmux sessions currently running. I do. So I'm going to create a new one by just typing tmux. This will create a new session, and you can have really as many sessions going as you like. You can attach to a specific session by, for example, using its session number 0, and you can also give names to sessions. So I'm going to go tmux and press enter. I'm actually inside a tmux session right now, so it won't let me nest a tmux session. So let me get out of this tmux session, and I'll get into a new tmux session. Let me just go to the root directory here, and clear and start up. So I can do, again, tmux list sessions. It turns out I was actually in that session. Let me start a new session. So a new tmux session looks a lot like a new terminal window. You have my sort of command prompt up here, and at the bottom you have this control status line. So we have one window that's just called bash currently because that's the program that's running in it. If I run some other program in this window, like if I run htop, then this window name will change to the program that it's running called htop. And I'm going to quit that. And there's some other things in the status line. Here there's the name of the machine that I'm logging into, tutorial VirtualBox, the current time, the current date, the uptime of the machine that I'm connected to, and I have a custom tmux setup combined with Powerline where I get these really nice graphics. This stuff, the uptime, for example, appears here because of my Powerline integration. And I also have CPU utilization, percent CPU utilization of the server showing up periodically whenever it's high enough to appear. So 0 point something will show up, but 0 point something smaller won't, which is why it pops in and out of existence. So this beautiful looking window is a result of tmux and Powerline working together. And if you want to know how to get a setup that looks like mine, take a look at some of the earlier videos on the wiki about setting up my environment. Okay, so let's get into tmux a little bit. We're in a session right now. How do we list sessions and attach to a session? So I'm going to detach from the session. I'll tell you how I do that shortly. It says I'm detached from session 2. I can list my sessions using tmux.ls list session. So I have one named 0 and one named 2, and I can see I've got some number of windows in each one. I can see when they were created, how large they are, and so on. How do I attach to session 2 again? I go tmux A for attach, -t for the target session, and then 2. And now I'm attached to 2 again. Now, all of the commands that you run, so by the way, I can completely log out of the server. I can kill this SSH session, close my PuTTY window altogether. And now if I create a new PuTTY session to access that server, I just have to remember which machine it was. So I think that one was probably VM. Indeed, I think it was. Let's just check. So tmux.ls. Nope, that's the wrong server. I have a different VirtualBox instance running. I think they're all differentiated by port locally, so I think I need to connect to the one with 3 2s. And we have, actually, if I connect to the one with 3 2s, the username is different. So this is a sort of a tutorial system that I set up last time, and so I'd forgotten the auto login username is tutorial and the password is ASDF. Okay, that's not correct. I'm going to clip this video here and just pause and restart when I've found my way in. Okay, so as expected, I just made a silly mistake, and here I am logged in again. So now that I've logged in again, I can list my sessions and see that my session's still running, and I can attach to it pretty easily, like so. Just attach tmux, attach to target to. Boom, here I am again. And this session is in exactly the same state that it was before I quit my SSH session. So this is quite nice. It means that any work that you were doing, if you lose your connection and are accidentally disconnected from the server, you don't have to like recreate all of your windows. Everything is still as you left it. And you'll see this in an even more powerful way as we continue. Okay, so that's kind of like what a session is. How do we actually control sessions? So there's this prefix, it's called a command prefix, that you have to use to interact with tmux in any way. Otherwise, any keystrokes that don't start with ctrl+b, you're interacting with the regular bash terminal. If you want to interact with tmux, the layer that's sort of on top of the bash terminal, then you have to press ctrl+b and then some other hotkey. So if you want to detach from a session, that's sort of the first thing you might want to learn is ctrl+b and then D for detach. Now I've actually just gone back to my SSH session that was that I was in before I called tmux attach, and I can call tmux attach again. So I can ctrl+b D attach, ctrl+b D. Oops, sorry, I hit ctrl+b/s, which is different. Ctrl+b D. Now I'm outside, and I can attach again. So that's nice. That lets you detach without closing your SSH window or your terminal window. Okay, so how about windows? So we have these windows on the bottom frame here. We only have one right now. What if I want to create a new window? So I can do ctrl+b, and then I forget the hotkey because I don't create windows all that often. Not often enough that I want the super fast hotkey for it. So I forget what the exact hotkey is for Windows, but there's a hotkey to enter command typing mode where I can type the long form name of whatever command I want. I find it easier to remember the long form names. So that's ctrl+b and then a colon. So colon is like shift colon. And now I can type a name, new - window. Boom, now I have a new window. So I have these two windows down here. I can click back and forth between them. I can also go to the next window with the hotkey. It's ctrl+b and then the letter N for next. Ctrl+b next, ctrl+b next, ctrl+b next. Okay, so I have two windows now I can rename. Let's say I want to rename this one, so I'll go ctrl+b, and then I can't remember the short command for doing it, so I'll just type the long command. So ctrl+b shift colon to get into typing mode, and then go rename -window. And what do I want to call it? I'm going to call it, test name. I screwed up doing test name because you can't have spaces in the name, or maybe you have to have, I don't normally have spaces in the name, so I haven't tried that. Maybe you can have spaces in the name if it's quoted. Test, let's see, new test. Yeah, okay, you can have spaces in the name, you just have to quote it properly. Okay, so now I have these two windows, and I can do things independently in each of them. Echo ASDF, echo $?, and I can go back to this window, and they look completely different. And the history, the bash history, as you press up and see what things you ran before, they're independent for the two panes, and they're maintained separately. They're maintained properly separately. So I have separate bash histories for these, and let's see if I go clear top q clear, cd/. These are things I can see in my history here. And if I go here, I will not. If I go up, I do not see those things. I see the things that I did in this window. Let's see. Let's just do some simple commands here. tmux, tmux/ plugins, and so on. Just viewing some stuff. Now if I ctrl+b D detach from my tmux and I do some separate stuff here, cd/, let's see, cd space downloads, c./documents, cd/. So I can see here the history contains all these commands I did here, does not contain the commands that I did in tmux. And if I go tmux a-t2 and connect here again, and I look at my, sort of history here, I'm going to see the tmux, all the commands I did in this window, not the commands I did outside of tmux. Here, if I do the same thing, history, pipe to tail, I'm going to see the commands I did here, not the commands outside of tmux. So you have these separate command histories, which allow you to kind of context switch and have all the commands you usually run in your history really quickly, really efficiently. So it's really nice to have extra windows that sort of persist. Now you can also have extra panes. So panes are a way of subdividing windows, so you can switch between windows, but within a window you can add panes. So you can go ctrl+b And the hotkeys that I know for splitting panes are this double quote and %sign. So %sign, if I pressed Ctrl+B already, now I press shift %sign, I get a horizontal split into two panes. So these are two independent panes. I can run like htop in this window and do some different stuff in this window and switch between them. I can switch between them not just with the mouse but with the keyboard. Ctrl+B right, Ctrl+B left takes me, so Ctrl+B left, run some stuff. Ctrl+B right, quit, ls, Ctrl+B left, do some stuff. So I can switch between those windows really easily. I can resize them with the mouse by clicking and dragging, and I can split this again, for example, vertically. So Ctrl+B shift quote, so double quote. I can create like a vertical split. Ctrl+B shift %sign. I can split this horizontally. Ctrl+B double quote. I can split this again. So I can actually get all different sorts of things running here, I can, do all this different stuff independently. So it's really nice. You get to sort of get these panes. Now when I switch windows, each window has its own sort of configuration of panes. So you can have a given configuration of panes, and this is how you like to work on this project. And by the way, if you resize the whole window, it resizes all of your panes proportionally, which is really nice. And you can actually log in multiple times to the same tmux session from different locations. So you can leave a tmux session open at work, go home, log in, attach to the same session. It'll just resize all the windows temporarily to the smaller of the two terminal window sizes that you're using, so everything fits in the smaller terminal window. When the smaller terminal window quits, it'll resize things to the larger terminal window that's logged in. And you can actually see yourself typing in both windows. If you type in one of them, they stay in sync. So you can sort of bring your work environment on the server with you wherever you go. So it's really quite nice. And again, if I detach from this, go away and come back, A-T2, I'm right back where I was. Every single one of these panes has an independent bash history. You don't lose your history. They're all tracked completely separately. The only situation in which you'll lose your history and lose your panes and lose your tmux configuration is if the server itself goes down. And actually, there's a way to work around that. We'll talk about in a moment. So that was panes. The next thing I want to talk about is zoom, because sometimes you'd like to kind of zoom in on one of these tiny panes, have a tiny pane and zoom in on it. So it's Ctrl+B, Z. Ctrl+B, Z. Just zooms in, Ctrl+B, Z, zooms back out. So it's sort of like maximize and then restore. Ctrl+B, Z, Ctrl+B, Z, click here, Ctrl+B, Z, Ctrl+B, Z, click here, Ctrl+B, Z, Ctrl+B, Z. Now I can scroll in these things with the mouse wheel. I can scroll while they're tiny, or I can zoom in and scroll while it's big. So Ctrl+B, Z is a really excellent command to know. Lets you sort of be, very productive. If you have lots of small windows, you're like, okay, hold on, let me check on this. Okay, check on this. Okay. It's also useful for copying and pasting, as we'll see in a moment. So if you want to know more about this, you should take a look at the tmux cheat sheet. There are a few of these. So if I search tmux cheat sheet, I really like this address. There's a GitHub address by Mohammed Allah here. This guy did a really nice job of putting together a nice little tmux cheat sheet. It's like not overwhelming, the amount of information, and like tons and tons of stuff you'd really like to know, including some configuration stuff. So this I highly recommend. I'll paste that here as a link so that everyone can take a look at that. And of course there's tmux.conf, which is not a bad reference. It's just a bit more overwhelming because it's a little bit more encyclopedic. It kind of covers, more stuff, and it's not as compact visually to see. So I don't like it quite as much visually, but it's also a good link to know. So I'd take a look at this one first, and then go to this. And of course you can look up lots of other info online. So that's kind of where I go when I'm trying to get, a quick handle on some command that I want to run. That's supposed to interface with tmux. Okay, so how about copy and paste? So copy and paste is sort of funny. I can actually copy and paste in my terminal window. I can copy there and paste in here, in this window on my desktop, for example. But the way you do it is you can't click and drag. Clicking and dragging doesn't do it. It doesn't copy. And when you click and drag, as soon as you let go, it unselects. So that doesn't help you copy. You need to be able to sort of, on Windows, Control-C is the copy keys. You have to be able to select and have it stay selected to be able to press Control-C. If I press Control-C, it just doesn't copy. So on Windows, and it may be the same on Linux, it is on some of the Ubuntu systems that I've set up, you can use Shift and then drag the mouse. So Shift, click and drag, copies. But the one trick is, if you have multiple panes like this, it's going to copy the data in all of the panes, and that might not be what you want. So if I paste here, you can see that I've actually gotten stuff from the left pane that I was trying to copy, and stuff from the right pane here as well. And so you'd kind of like to get rid of that stuff from the right pane, not copy that. Well, unless you want to copy, in which case you can just shift, drag, and you do get everything. If you only want to copy stuff on the left pane, there are actually plugins to tmux to do this, but I've found it easy enough that I don't really need a plugin. I just use the zoom hotkey. So if I want to copy, this stuff, I just do ctrl+bz, shift-click drag, ctrl+bz, and then I can paste. And you get quite fast at doing this. So, if I want to get in here and copy, ctrl+bz, shift-click, ctrl+bz, paste down here. I'm so used to it at this point, it's just like immediate. It might feel a little awkward when you first do it. But, try it out and see how it works for you. There are also like plugins for helping you capture information from a terminal window really efficiently, like plugins for, take a look, try Googling for plugins for tmux, like copy-paste plugins for tmux or logging plugins for tmux, where you can just kind of, press a hotkey and get like the last few pages of text copied into a temporary file in your home directory or something like that. Okay, so that's copy. How about paste? So this is sort of a function of your terminal window as well. It may be the case, as it is for me, that your terminal window has paste by way of right-click. So if I like shift-click and drag here, I don't press Ctrl+V to paste. I just right-click. Now, so I go shift left-click, right-click. Oh, sorry, it's shift right-click. It's funny. I do this stuff intuitively. I never actually like think about the hotkeys I'm pressing. So I have to like mess around for a bit to get it right. So yeah, shift right-click. So shift click and drag, shift left click and drag to copy, shift right click to paste. And that's how you paste into these tmux panes. If you want to paste somewhere else in your operating system, you have to use your operating system specific paste mechanism, which in my case is Ctrl+V. So sorry, this is actually shift right click. Okay, now save and restore is a really cool feature. So all of this great configuration that you do, you can have tons of sessions running, tons of windows in each session, tons of panes in each window, and full bash histories for every single pane in every single window in every single session. And if you don't want to lose all that data, if it just so happens that the server has to go down for a reboot, you might think that you're, out of luck. But it turns out there's this really cool plugin for tmux called Resurrect that allows you to save the entire state of all of your tmux sessions, windows, and panes, and even reload automatically when you reload your session some of your programs that were running. If they got terminated, you have to explicitly allow such a thing to happen. And it saves not only your whole layout of everything, but also all of the individual histories and the contents of the screens, like the contents of the scrollback buffers for all of your panes. And I have it installed in this case, and my sort of setup that I describe in videos on this wiki do have this. They show how to install everything that I use from a script that includes this plugin. So all you have to do is press Ctrl+B to activate a tmux command, and then the command itself is Ctrl+S. And it says saving, and boom, it says tmux environment saved. It emits one of these or two of these commands that kind of clutter up your views on every single pane. But that's kind of a small price to pay for having to literally rebuild, in the case that you don't have this plugin, having to rebuild your entire, workspace on all of your Windows panes and sessions by hand. Because now I can just mangle all of my views, mess them up, and, delete some of them. By the way, you kill a pane is Ctrl+B-X, and then yes, Ctrl+B-X, and then yes, so I can kill panes. I can go here and do that same thing with here, Ctrl+B-X, and because this is the only pane in the window, it'll delete the whole window. Now my tmux instance looks pretty mangled, and I can detach from this. And then I can go tmux.ls, and I can see, what I've got running, and go tmux attach-t2. Now this looks like my mangled interface. This is not what I wanted. I can go Ctrl+B, Ctrl+R for restore. I went Ctrl+B-S for save. Here's Ctrl+B-R for restore. Now it's actually restored, and I have all of my same panes and same windows back with the same configuration. And it tries its best to get your it definitely gets your bash history accurate for every single window and pane. It tries its best to get the scroll back buffer right, but sometimes it sort of messes up the scroll back buffer a little bit. As you can see here, we don't have the history tail which was the last function in this window, is not showing here. And things are a little bit messed up. The really impressive thing is that we can blow away all of the panes in all of my sessions. So I just killed every single pane. Now if I go tmux.ls, my second session is gone. So I'm going to attach to the first session, and I'm going to, because there's only one session now, I can actually just type tmux.a. Don't even need to specify the session. I can blow away, it actually saved everything in this session as well. You can see these history commands running here. I can blow away everything in this session as well. Now if I go tmux.ls, there are no sessions running. There isn't even a tmux server running. So now I can go tmux, and I can't go tmux.a, it'll say there's nothing running. If I go to tmux, now it started a new session, ctrl+b, ctrl+r to restore. It has restored everything with minor errors because of things running out there. I click in, and it, in fact, loaded up htop for me again. So this is pretty impressive. It actually loaded htop for me again, because that was running when I saved. It's a little spotty doing that, but it's pretty nice. So if I detach from this, ctrl+b, d, and then go tmux.ls, you can see both of my sessions have been reconnected. I can go tmux.a-t0, connect to the first one. You'll have to take my word for it that this is what that session looked like. And then tmux.a-t2. It even preserves the session names. And this session looks exactly like it was. Everything is restored. So that ability to save to disk is quite cool. And the hotkey for that is ctrl+b and then ctrl+s/ctrl+r for save and restore. So this is a super powerful feature if you want to be able to take down the entire tmux server, reboot the whole server that it's running on, and still have everything be persistent about your kind of workspace. Okay, let's clean up that. Okay, so I'm also going to talk to you very briefly about FPP, which is it's called Facebook Path Picker. It's a cool plugin. Well, it has a cool plugin for tmux, and I have that in this case. It does something very, very neat. It, oftentimes in your workflow, something you might want to do is, list something in the current directory, or even grep, or find something in a file structure. You just see a file name that you want to be able to access. Like, what if I want to sort of read this file? I can copy this and go into my favorite editor and paste this string and load up that file. The file happens to be blank. I can in general, this sort of technique of mousing over something, copying it, typing up your favorite text editor, pasting it, pressing enter. That happens to be an empty file too. I guess you can see that its file size is 0. Let's look at tmux.conf. So if you go micro, tmux.conf, copy, paste, enter, now you can see the contents of this file. And it's pretty annoying having to copy and paste file names, especially when they're like long paths and you're trying to look at one file after another. Oftentimes you'd like for there to be some tool that will just see file names on the screen in your terminal window and let you select them and open up your favorite text editor. That's exactly what FPP is. So if I run like ls, ls is going to give me this list of files, that's L for a long view. And then I pipe the output of that to FPP. You have to download and install FPP. In this case, I've done that. It's done as part of my automated script that I provided instructions for in the setup video earlier. What it looks like is this. It's just a program that lets you open up different files. Any file that it knows how to open or that it recognizes as a file type, you're going to be able to locate with up and down and press enter on it. It'll open up your favorite editor. The editor is based off of an environment variable, which is set up in a script, in my install script. So this is not the greatest example because we can't open up directories, so almost everything here we can't open up, and it doesn't know how to, I just haven't configured it, so it doesn't know how to open up a lot of these files that don't have nice known extensions. Now that's typing something and piping it to FPP. You can actually do this with your whole screen in tmux by just typing ctrl+b, F. Now it's going to actually take everything that it saw on the screen and attempt to interpret it. Now it screws up a bit if you scroll up and down and wrap around, the visuals are a little wonky, but it kind of works. You actually kind of get a decent number of files kind of auto-detected for you. And this is kind of a bad example because again, almost nothing is sort of viewable in in this particular folder, but let me pause the video for a second and find a folder where there's more stuff to look at. Okay, so as a very simple example, let's just do ls on install script / part2. Okay, so we see these files, so I go ctrl+b, F, and part picker didn't manage to pick up anything there. Okay, so let's try a long listing, because sometimes it does better. Ctrl+b, F. Okay, so it detects tmux.conf as something it can load, and for some strange reason it doesn't like install user-specific.sh. So we can see tmux.conf. Let's try maybe like an ls-l. Oh, sorry, I'm not in that path. Let's go to that path. Part2, ls-l, and -al. And let's try piping that to FPP. We'll just experiment with it a bit. Okay, so piping it to FPP, it works quite nicely. Ctrl+b, F. Now it actually seems to be working more nicely. I don't know why. It's a little bit temperamental, but it's worth kind of just pressing the hotkey Ctrl+b, F, and seeing if it happens to make it super easy to access the file that you're trying to access. It's a little bit quicker than moving the mouse and copying and pasting. Nice little utility. So I can go load that up in my favorite editor. Ctrl+b, F. I can load up, you know, Powerline shell default. Control-Q to exit my editor, Control-B, F. Let's open up the tmux default, Control-Q, Control-B, F. Let's load up micro settings. You know, very easy to dry out each different file very quickly without moving my hand to the mouse or anything like that. So it's just sort of a nice little utility. So that's Control-B and then F. You just press the letter F after you let go of Control-B. Okay, so a brief word about setup. So the configuration of tmux basically comes from my install script. You basically run one install script, and then you run the second install script, and then you have to do something in tmux. So what do you have to do in tmux? What you have to do is the install script itself will place in your home directory a tmux.conf or .tmux.conf file, which basically describes how tmux should behave. Its configuration file does a whole bunch of nice stuff for you. It configures mouse mode so that mouse actually works in tmux, mouse wheel scrolling, configures the terminal type for appropriate colors, sets terminal keys so that you can actually use Control left and right to navigate a word at a time on the command line, triggers the PowerShell integration with tmux, and then loads these plugins, like the FPP plugin for loading files quickly with Control+B, F, the tmux resurrect plugin for saving your, tmux state if you have to reboot, tmux logging, which I didn't talk in detail about, but you could take a look at this plugin online and see how to really easily produce captures of all the text in a pane, and then all of this gets loaded by a tmux plugin manager. So you have to initialize this tmux plugin manager. I provide, by the way, this tmux.conf file in my install script. But you have to initialize these plugins by pressing Ctrl+B, Shift+I. Then it says tmux environment reloaded. That will just configure all of those plugins to be set up. I already did that, but I just wanted to show you here what that looks like. That's kind of how you set this up. And you have the link to help. So that's a crash course in tmux. I hope this is useful to you. I think it probably will be. Super useful tool. And look out for the next video. Thanks for watching.